Hey everyone! Today we'll be looking at the Keychron K8 10 keyless keyboard. This is a board that I've been interested in trying out as it's at a similar price point as the GMMK TKL board that I reviewed earlier this year. In fact, a fully built Keychron K8 will run you about $40 cheaper than a GMMK and $30 cheaper if you select the aluminum frame option. This means that you can basically get an out-of-the-box keyboard ready to go with switches and keycaps for the price of a bare-bones version of the GMMK. I've also had a few friends actually purchase Keychrons in the past and highly recommended them, so I wanted to see what the hype was all about, so I ordered one. In the box, you get a few instructions, a USB-C cable, the extra keycaps for PC users, a keycap puller, a switch puller, and the board itself. Now, when you order a Keychron, you are given the option to choose between Gateron red, blue, or brown switches when you check out. As I haven't used a clicky board since my original Razer Black Widow from 2014, I wanted to give the blues a try. Now, I've come to realize that I really don't like blue switches, but more on that later. Initial impressions are pretty good. The version of the board I picked up is the fully plastic one, and there is no exterior screws that would allow you to get to the internals. The build feels sturdy, there isn't too much flex in the board for being a fully plastic outer case. The actual top plate feels like a metal of some sort, which might contribute to the rigidness of the board. The K8 also has 3 different height adjustability settings, which is a nice touch. The one other thing I noticed right out of the gate is just how thick the board is. When you compare it to some other keyboards, the difference is pretty significant. Here's what it looks like compared to the Idobao ID80 that's been my daily driver for the past few months, as well as the GMMK TKL. You'll notice that the height difference between the two is pretty significant. I think that having some sort of a wrist rest for this board is a must-have for longer periods of use. The K8 weighs in at about 737 grams, which puts it at about 100 grams lighter than the GMMK, which makes sense because there is a lot more plastic on this board. Now, it was after these first impressions when I actually started to have some issues with this keyboard. When I was testing it, just to get a sense of how the board was going to work, I noticed that the period key on my keyboard was not registering 100% of the time. After some investigating, I determined that the board shipped with a malfunctioning switch. Fortunately, because the K8 features a hot swappable PCB, I was able to pop the switch out, test it with another one, which confirmed it wasn't an issue with the PCB, but the switch itself. What was more problematic, however, was when I pulled out the dead switch, or the switch that was acting faulty, one of the pins broke off completely as I was removing it. Now, it is really nice that this board is hot swappable because it is ultimately an easy fix, but if somebody doesn't have extra switches lying around that would be able to quickly put something in, you might be hooped. I expected the quality control to be a little bit better, especially when you're paying $80 for a keyboard, so I will be filing a warranty claim with Keychron after this review is done. Back to the hot swappability, however. I think it is awesome that more companies are including this as a feature on their keyboards, as it really allows users to experiment and play around with new switches to see what they like. I also like the fact that this board supports 3 and 5 pin switches. This means that I can swap out the blues here that I'm not really liking for something else more in my preference. Before I switch things over, however, here's a typing test of what the board sounds like with the stock switches. Another big feature that this board offers is the ability to connect wirelessly via Bluetooth. To access Bluetooth mode, simply flip the switch over to the Bluetooth mode, pair it with the device you want to use, and you're off and running. It was really simple to configure and set up, and overall, I haven't really seen another mechanical keyboard that has that wireless capability that's this easy. The other great thing about the K8 when it comes to Bluetooth connectivity is the fact that you are able to connect up to 3 separate devices at the same time, so you don't have to disconnect and then reconnect and then disconnect and then reconnect. It's a nice touch, and the board works fairly well when it's connected wirelessly so far in my experience. The keycaps that come with the Keychron K8 are also quite nice. They have a bit of a rubbery texture to them, which allows you to grip your fingers onto the board a little bit better when you're gaming or typing, and they're shine through, so you're able to see the light from the LED on the board shine through the keycap and illuminate the character or the legends. Now, let's talk about the RGB for a moment. It is a little bit dim compared to some of the other boards that I've seen in the past, and considerably dimmer than the GMMK. Now that being said, the GMMK is a floating keycap design, whereas the Keychron does have them more inside the board itself. But that being said, for me personally, RGB isn't a huge selling feature when it comes to a keyboard, so your mileage may vary and your opinion may vary in this regard. So with that all being said, let's review the pros and cons that I think this board has. I think for one, it is a really good price point for a mechanical keyboard, especially one that can be hot swappable. I also think that the build quality of the board generally is pretty good. You're not going to get highest quality full metal cases at this price point, but for what it is, I think it's a sturdy board that's going to be durable for a long period of time. The 3 and 5 pin compatibility for the hot swappable PCB is also great to see, and I really like the fact that you are able to connect the K8 wirelessly to your device. I'm not a Mac user, but I should also mention the fact that you are able to very quickly switch between OSs is also a huge feature, and I can imagine that being a major value add for somebody who is both using the Mac and PC ecosystems. In terms of the cons, I really think the biggest knock against this board is the fact that it is so thick. I would not be able to use this board as a daily driver unless I picked up some sort of a wrist rest to even out the way that it feels when you're typing. The other thing that I'd mention here is that the RGB is a bit weak compared to some of the other boards that are out there on the market, and the poor quality control with receiving a board that had a faulty switch from the get-go is a bit of a concern. Now that all being said, I still think this is a really nice entry-level point for somebody who wants to get into the mechanical keyboard scene or simply start experimenting and customizing with different switch options. So I pass the question off to you. What are your thoughts on the Keychron K8? Do you have one? Are you enjoying it so far? What are some of the comments that you have on that board? Be sure to leave a comment below, and if you enjoyed this content and what I've been doing over the past few months, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. It really does mean a lot, and the support that I've received so far has been incredible. So thanks again for all of your support, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.